to switch movies. It has been exactly 2 months since we've done an
Oh my gosh.
episode, and if you're just tuning in, the world has gone to shit in that 2 month time frame. Where it's
Like I
crazy.
was just thinking, it's like, oh my gosh, it's been that long, but I'm like, wait, a lot has happened in just the last month. I'm just like, it's only been a month? Oh my God.
I know the world. We don't have to go into depths. We've all been talking about it for ages. We're in
Yeah.
quarantine. We're in isolation. And I feel like the people who are dealing with this the best are the movie lovers. We're like,
Yes.
we're okay here. We're all right because we got our collections, we got our subscriptions. The streaming services are all doing great right now. I mean,
Right? Gosh. It's pretty amazing. And I've all those jokes before like everything got serious. Everyone's like, "Oh, introverts have been preparing for this their entire
yeah.
lives." And now even the introverts are like, can I go outside for a second?"
Well, on that note, how are you holding up? I mean, you are you're in the land that is doing far worse. So,
Yeah, exactly. It's the best time to be Australian right now on your own little island. But we're doing okay. LA is we're getting into it. People are finally, I think like it was only 2 weeks ago, it feels like an eternity ago, that literally during the lockdown there were still like farmers markets going on in Brentwood, which is like, a wealthier part of LA, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? Like what is happening? But I think those are all finally all gone. So I think,
oh, good.
people are finally learning to not be out. There's still, in my opinion, because I went and got some to-go food yesterday. It's the first time I went out all week. And I felt like there were still too many cars on the road. Granted, most of them had Uber stickers, and hopefully the rest of them were like, Postmates drivers,
Mm.
because boy, that's another service that's really getting a lot of business
Yeah.
right now is food delivery services.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
We've we've had our takeout a couple of times, and it was in the early days of our lockdown. Our lockdowns were a little bit um, on the fence. Like we weren't quite sure what you could and couldn't do, and can we actually have deliveries? Mum was going, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one thing you can have. I'm like, sweet, we're getting KFC. And I straight up wrote out a whole note, put it on the front door, and I'm like, yes, you have the correct house. We ordered KFC. Please leave it right there, and please take care of yourself and have a nice day.
Yeah,
My mom
absolutely.
was just like, you
And that's like
actually put
I'm
that on
making
the
sure to
door? Like, I
yeah, making sure to like tip because I know in Australia you guys don't have tipping because you guys have like higher
did. Yeah.
wages. But like I'm making sure to tip all my delivery people really well, tipping like to go people really well because there's still people out there in restaurants that even my roommate he works at a burger place and there he has to go into work to do just to go stuff.
Ugh.
So he's only making hourly because most of it is, Postmates, Uber Eats, whatever you decide to use, but still people ordering to go and they're just not tipping. And I just don't understand that. It's just like people are like, these people are, they're made to be essential workers.
Mm.
You don't need a fucking gourmet burger right
Yeah,
now.
that's
Like
true.
you just don't. Like, granted, I love my prepared food. I love, hey, someone else make my food and I'll buy it from you.
Yeah.
But if someone is there preparing my food and boxing it up while wearing a mask and protective gloves,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give them a little bit extra for like I'm not trying to be dramatic, but they are putting their life on the line
Oh, for sure.
because people are still having to work because a lot of people do live paycheck to paycheck. I've been very fortunate that my streams have been making some money. Like I'm almost monetized on YouTube and stuff. But not everyone is like that. So there
That's
are
true.
still people that have to go into work to provide for themselves or their family. And so make sure, like, I don't know where you're listening to this, but even if your country doesn't have tipping, which I know a lot of, outside of the US, like, granted, it's our own fault that we have to tip because the service industry got so fucked from the
Well,
what is it called? The prohibition.
oh boy.
But it's just a fact of life now, and that people aren't tipping, especially here, it's so fucking weird.
Yeah, we're in a time where we're learning who are the nice people, who are the real assholes, who are the selfish pricks of the world, and we're realizing little things that we take for granted. Even watching movies, you realize what a privilege it is, you know, with cinemas all being shut down. And I've learned that a lot of movie reviewers, YouTubers are all entitled douches.
Dude,
I kind of suspected it, but now like it's official.
But and it's such a thing that that's why, I didn't do the top 10 worst films of the year or something like that, because, you've seen my reviews, Ashley, and you love when I rant and rave about a bad movie, and I think I only did it twice last year. I was pretty proud of myself that I think it was Lion King and Midway were my two that, to quote you, kill it with fire. Those are my two kill it with fire ones. And that's fun, but it's just like, and then we were talking about movies that made you sad and stuff like that, and I brought up Endgame because, Endgame did make me cry like 3 times, and I saw it 5 times in theaters, and it's just like, there's so many critics, like, and people that I really do respect and like as people, but they're just like, oh, thank God we don't have to write about the MCU every day, and I'm like, I get what you're talking about because journalism, like, you get more clicks on those articles just because, and I realize that is a problem with journalism, but also there's still fun movies, like there's still good movies, and like just the fact that they're just like kind of tossed aside, and it's like, oh well, yes, did Endgame make you cry? Well, I saw this French film from 1983 in a tiny public theater in Western France after World War II was, and it's like, oh my God,
careful,
no
people,
one gives
Ben's
a fuck.
pulling out the monocle.
Yeah, it's just like,
I love when he does that impersonation.
Oh, your movie made money? It must not be that good.
I think, actually, I totally get when people say, like, comic book fatigue, because it is especially feeling like they are plucking every comic story they can find.
Oh, God, yes.
And it kind of gets to the point where I'm like, are you actually reading these comics and going, like, should we adapt this? No, it's more like, oh, here's one, throw it in. But what I'm disappointed about is the fact that this was the year that was going to be so big for female-led superhero films and directed by female directors, and it's like, this was our year, and it's like, here's coronavirus, bitches. It's like, son of a fucking bitch, can't we get a break? Just one. It was our time. It was our time.
And all 3 of the big ones, like, Wonder Woman 84, Black Widow, Mulan, like, all 3 of those, like, looked pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're not interested in comic book movies or not, like, they all looked real good, even though apparently the only song from the 80s is that Blue Monday song, because that's literally in every 80s thing ever.
Oh, that is so true. And I have, like, 3 versions of that song on my iPod.
Yeah, like, y'all know that more than just shopping malls, shoulder pads, and that song is from the 80s, right? Like, do movie studios know that? Because I don't think they do.
Yeah, there is so many, like, 80s is my jam. Okay, 80s and 90s. I live for 80s and 90s, but I have such a soft spot for 80s music versus 90s music. So it's like 80s then 90s. But so oftentimes I'm just like, I watch movies and it's like, my God, you're just using like the same 3 songs. Like, come on, we got more than this. Like even I enjoyed Captain Marvel more than most, but just like and it felt like it wasn't necessary for them to use all those 90s tropes. It was just like, you don't have to put No Doubt and Nirvana within 30 seconds of each other. I know what decade it is. I like them using No Doubt because I don't feel like No Doubt is something that pops up much. I think the last time I heard a No Doubt song used was Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion, and I'm all for that.
Oh, God.
That's a much.
Well, when it's No Doubt, it's never No Doubt. It's always Gwen Stefani.
Well,
it's all like, cause she has all those hit songs too.
That is very true. So today we are taking a trip down memory lane, 80s for one of us, 90s for the other, because the theme for today is childhood. And if it wasn't for the fact that Ben said he'd already seen it, my childhood choice would have been striptease. And I ain't even afraid to say that.
I will admit, though, I have seen part of your movie, because I remembered parts of it, but I still don't count it because even in my Journey to 300, like, The Shining, I didn't watch The Shining last year. I meant to watch it, but I would have still counted that because I've seen, everyone's seen The Shining on TBS or TNT, like, or whatever cable channels you guys have in Australia. Everyone's seen parts of The Shining here and there throughout their years of existence, but not a lot of people have, like, sat down and watched the entire 2.5 hour movie. And that's how I felt about this, about Ashleigh's choice was Drop Dead Fred, directed by At De Jong, starring Phoebe Cates and Rick Mayall, and from 1991. And I remembered parts of it, like I remember, for some reason, I remember Cobwebs. I don't know why I remembered that. And
that's one of my favorite jokes.
Of course, whatever.
That's
it was
me.
91, so I was at least 4. I was at least 3 or 4. So probably like 5 or 6 when I first watched this. And man, just like, we'll get into the movie, but boy, have kids' movies changed. What is this rated? Is this rated PG? It is. Okay, it's PG-13. But I feel like that had to have changed. Because I feel, like movies like Gremlins, which Phoebe Cates is also in, Gremlins was rated PG before, and now it's rated PG-13 because they're like, okay, what is it, like 16 Candles is still PG-13, and it has like just nudity in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, times for sure have changed, and I think both of the films that we selected really show that. If anything, it just shows that things these days are so fucking PC. It's ruining everything. Like, everything's got to be spoon-fed to children. Oh, you can't do this, and you can't say this. And I'm like, wow, these kids are so unprepared for the real world. They're just going to be, like, opening the door and, like, what is this land? What? Oh, my God.
Well, did you see what, speaking of which, did you see what Disney Plus is doing?
No.
For the movie Splash, like, they're CGIing, like, making is it Daryl Hannah in Splash?
Yeah.
Is that who that is? Yeah, they're like when she runs off, when she first appears with Tom Hanks, like she's naked, obviously, and there's like a 2-second shot of her butt running into the ocean, and Disney Plus CGI'd her hair longer, and then there's a few other examples of, like, I saw the one with Lilo and Stitch where Lilo hides in the dryer from her older sister, and then they changed it to like a clothes hamper or something like that. To, like, I guess to not tell kids to hide in the dryer, which, I mean, like, if you're a parent, just be like, hey, don't hide in the dryer, don't do that. Like,
you're one of those parents.
And then there was it was on Twitter, like, a few other examples of, like, Disney Plus changing things. But yeah, it's just like, I'm not one of those people that's saying, like, everything's so PC. Like, there is a place for political correctness, but yeah, this movie wouldn't. And that's we'll get into it now. Like, that's really my problem with this movie, is that I don't know who this movie's made for. Like, but I do also, on the other hand, realize, and my roommate even said that when I was like, oh yeah, Ashleigh gave me Drop Dead Freddy. He's like, oh my God, I love that movie as a kid. It probably sucks now, but I love that movie as a kid. And I'm like, well, that's fair. And that's true. Like, all of the humor in this movie is very, like, kid friendly. Obviously, having an imaginary friend is just like the ultimate dream.
Yeah.
But it's just like having an imaginary friend that's a legitimate sociopath might not be my favorite imaginary friend. And, like how they kind of shoehorn in that, Carrie Fisher's boat sank. Don't worry, she got a big insurance settlement. And they just kind of like brush that under the rug real quick. But no,
Fisher.
what was it about this movie, Ashleigh, for you that made you want to choose it? And you've told me, like, this is how I gave you Hot Fuzz, and that was my make or break. This was your make or break movie for our friendship. So what is it about Drop Dead Fred that has, like, kept it going from not just being a childhood movie?
Drop Dead Fred is one of the most quotable films to me. Like, that Cobwebs line, oh God, I can live with that scene. That's probably me right now, Cobwebs. But
good show, folks. We'll be seeing you. Welcome to the apocalypse.
This came out the year I was born, but I probably didn't watch it for years. After that, I remember my brother introduced it to me. But my brother pretty much introduced me to every film in my childhood. And we were always quoting it back and saying the lines and kind of acting them out, and it kind of became like a bonding film for us. Still to this day is, with my brother. Occasionally he'll come in and it'll be like, all on the side, all on the chair, yucky yucky smelly dog poo. Like why is that a song that people would sing? It's not. But that's like our lives are all quoting. It's like, hello Jemima, hello Angeline, hello, you're gonna die. No, 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 yes, yes, yes. Like, we would just do this shit, and it's like, why are we doing this? It's like, it's fun, that insanity where it, as weird as it is, and there are so many fun, like, double entendres in this movie, and I was very mature for my age as a kid, so I did understand the double entendres.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like this film that is kind of telling you about embracing your inner child, because this is a film about a young woman whose life has gone to shit. Like, she's had the worst day ever. And I love...
It's a bad day.
It really is. I love that moment where she goes back to work because she's a stenographer, and she walks in and everybody's annoyed at her for being late, and she's like, sorry, Your Honor, I lost my husband, my car, my money. And he's like, all in one lunch hour. And it's like, yeah, it was a bad day. And then she gets fired on top of that. So yay.
Right? What a dick of a judge. Like,
right. So she is forced to go back to her bitch of a mother. And in response, she ends up reconnecting with her childhood imaginary friend, and chaos completely ensues. But it makes so much sense in a weird way. Like, I feel both the films we picked, as vastly different as they are, both of them remind me why I love movies. Because it's not just like, I sat down and I was entertained. It's, I sat down and there was a real poignant piece behind what I was watching. There was a deeper meaning. And maybe as a child I wouldn't quite understand that, but as an adult I can. And this is so a film about what happens when you suppress emotions, when you don't deal with things, when you don't really allow children to be children. It's like, no, don't get dirty, don't scrape your knee, don't do this. It's like, no, let them live. And you see what she's become, this suppressed, submissive person who doesn't know how to be comfortable in herself because of all these controlling influences. And Drop Dead Fred is so over the top crazy because it's kind of to counteract all the controlling elements in her life. And I just want to say, they did not address it, but it is very clear that she has some daddy issues. I can spot that a mile away because she's in her early 20s dating someone who's like twice her age. So
twice her age, she's still dressing like she shops at Gap Kids. Like, still has the schoolgirl uniform, shoes on with the white socks. Like,
oh god,
still sleeps in a full nightie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that obviously that was on purpose. You know, like, she still like has like repressed childhood syndrome going on. But it's, I don't know, like, it was hard to, not that you were rooting against Phoebe Cates, but it wasn't easy to root for her just because she wasn't very apologetic for what Fred was doing. Now, granted, when Fred was messing up the mom's house, you're like, yeah, go get him. But when Fred is threatening to have Carrie Fisher lose everything in her life, including her job, her house, and then she goes to a restaurant, she's like throwing food and everything like that, and she's just like, I don't know, Drop Dead Fred's doing it. And she's not like, granted, that the dinner scene was the only scene that I laughed at, just like the water. That was great acting by Phoebe Cates of like, and then like slowly puts it down, like, and that was funny, but it almost got canceled out because what's his name? The guy from Friday Night Lights, Ron Eldard, the guy who's like infatuated her out of nowhere. Like, he's, hey guys, talk about fucking stage 5 alert, like bells should be going off for Phoebe Cates with that guy. That guy is
He came out
certifiably insane.
a little strong, just a little bit.
Just, hey, I saw you once at a courthouse. You know, we never fall out of love. I was like, Jesus, dude, like, there's steps in between those two sentences.
They were childhood friends, so
I know, but I'm saying, like, they hadn't
least
seen each other for 20 years.
I think that they kind of very briefly did touch on kind of his issues and why he's a bit on the clingy side. The thing is that they did it right in the middle of that lunch scene, so you're so focused on the antics of Fred that it overshadows the fact that he's having this deep moment where he's saying that he's adjusting to being divorced and being married for so long. He's like, he doesn't know how to be single. He says he feels like every woman he went on a date with, he's like, should I hold her hand? Should I not hold her hand? He's like, feeling like I want to give everybody my house key, and because you don't remember how to do those steps anymore. But literally, the volume on him is so low in that moment because we're watching the struggle between Phoebe Cates going, like, no, I'm in public, don't do this, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck shit up, and he fucks shit up, and...
But that's what I don't get is that, just, like, from a plot standpoint, like, why doesn't... Like, Drop Dead Fred, his whole reason that he reappears is because she's unhappy. And that's why, you know, all imaginary friends disappear is because adults become happy, you know, or they grow up. But, like, since she's repressed, like, he comes back, and that's why she, like, that she sees... Like, why wouldn't he want her to be happy? Like, seems like she's happy going on this date and moving on from Charles. So, like, why would he just, like, fuck everything up? Just, like, and granted, like you said, he is chaos embodied. He is basically the Joker. And, I don't know, it just seems so weird that he would fuck that up so bad. And I don't know. No.
I feel like it's a weird way. It's kind of, how do I say it? I feel like it's almost like, you know, the reverse psychology that you do with children, which is apparently something that fucked up my mom's parenting skills, because my mom has always been a single parent, and so when she was taking care of my brother and sister when they were little, before I ever came along into the world, my grandma would have to look after my brother and sister, and my brother was a little terror of a kid. And with my nana watching him while my mom was at work, she used reverse psychology on my brother. So if he was jumping on the couch, she'd say, "Okay, Tim, jump on the couch." And then he'd stop doing it. So when my mom came around and she's like, "Tim, don't jump on the couch," he'd be jumping on the couch, and she's like, "Thanks a lot. Now I don't know how to parent my child." And so I think Drop Dead Fred is very much like, I'm going to give you exactly what you want. But in his being helpful, I think he's just kind of, at the same time, giving her a chance to see that what's around her is not good for her. It's not healthy. I think one of the most beautiful moments is when he kind of stops being chaotic for just a moment, and we see the moment that she kind of started to suppress herself, and she explains why, and he's just looking her with sadness and compassion, like, I want to help you, and I'm sorry I wasn't there. And she just says, you know, you were gone, and all the happiness went out of my life. And the story kind of gets a bit emotional for me at that point. I feel like things get very into that realm, like it stops being so crazy and starts really going into, like, child psychology. I mean, that mom is a bitch. She a bitch.
No, she's the worst. She's pretty terrible. Like, and it's funny. Like, I read just like the first trivia thing when you're scrolling on IMDb is that they offered Tim Burton this movie and he turned it down. And I'm like, and it seems very, very Tim Burton. So I understand like why they offered it to him. But it's just like, is Fred real? Because a lot of the stuff that goes on, he's the one that snaps that waiter's Greek gown or whatever it's called. Like, she doesn't reach up and do it. So like I wish there were moments that showed that she was really doing these things, or because like there's no way a parent would not realize that my little girl didn't just go get this big a thing of mud from outside in 30 seconds and then pour all the stuff on top of it.
Mud pie!
Oh
Yay!
gosh.
I
But that's the thing, I was like, he's like really doing this stuff.
I've ummed and ahed over the years of is he real, is he not real, and sometimes I tell myself I'm like, it doesn't matter, and then other times I'm like, is he or isn't he? And I think for me the one scene that really says, yep, he's real is when they're at this psychiatrist's office and there are all the other kids and they have imaginary friends and the imaginary friends start playing together. Like Phoebe Cates can't see the others, she only sees Fred, so all the kids are only seeing their individual imaginary friends and they're like, what in the hell is going on? But it's entertaining. But the imaginary friends get it and they're giving the warning to Fred, don't let her take the green pills. So I feel like that was kind of the moment that says, okay, they're actually real. There is this whole world, and then at the end, the fact that the stalker territory guy, his daughter, has an imaginary friend, and it's Drop Dead Fred. He's moved on to the next kid, which I thought was quite beautiful. If I was Phoebe Cates in that position, I'd probably start crying, going, I want to see you again, but. Oh, well.
Right? Like, is he just like an imaginary friend for hire? It's just like a temp job?
I guess it's like the Tooth Fairy. They just show up when they're needed. It's
Yeah.
Although instead of like getting a tooth, getting money for a tooth, you probably find a bunch of teeth under your pillow instead. It's the strangest way of helping people, but you just kind of look one of my biggest problems with this film, not to say it's like it makes me hate the film because I love this movie to death.
Yeah.
It's that I never got to understand if she ever had a relationship with her dad. Like, did he walk out and that was it? Like,
that was it.
Or were they like separated and like maybe they had like joint custody? Maybe sometimes she saw the dad. I don't know. They never addressed it. It was left very...
The dad just said, fuck it.
I mean, either way, I'm very sad because I'm like, he is the good parent. He was comforting. He was, obviously he hated his wife because she was a bitch. And the fact that, he didn't have a problem with the imaginary friend. And he's like, she's just a kid. She's just having fun.
And that's what I'm wondering is that, especially because she had a good, like, granted, the mom was a bitch on wheels. And just lived just the worst. But she had a good dad, so I'm wondering where all this repressed, like, granted, like, her mom was very, like, demanding, her dad was kind of I hate to use the word beta, but, like, he just kind of let the mom, like, he'd be like, oh, let her do her stuff, but then would go back to reading the paper and then flat out just left. But then, like, even, Stalker Guy, he seems like a good dad, at least. Like, he's always talking about his daughter and stuff like that. So why does she get a real destructive imaginary friend? Like, what childhood is being, like, granted, she has a nanny, but the nanny's not the mom. The nanny doesn't hate her or, like, tell her that, oh, you were, like, the mom literally tells Phoebe Cates that she was a mistake at one point and says, like, I only had you to save my marriage and it didn't work. It's like, fucking A, man. Chill the fuck out.
I know that.
But,
the common denominator in those two is that they are children of divorce. So Elizabeth, her dad walked out the door. Again, don't know if they ever communicated again, but he flat out walked out the door where she would feel like, where now she's been raised to feel like it's her fault. And she had that moment with Fred where she said that her mom was like actively always trying to hurt her, and she just kind of had to shut down and stop showing her when it was hurting her so that she didn't have that effect on her. And as for Mickey's child, I mean, we see him at the start. He's just come from a custody case because he said that he's having a really nasty custody battle and he was fighting for custody of his daughter. So obviously he's had a really hard divorce, and that's going to have a very negative impact on the daughter. And it's like, my parents have split up. no, like that feeling of like nobody really wants me, maybe feeling responsible for it to a degree. And even the nanny's just like, I can't take this shit anymore. She's out the door. It's like, oh man, this kid probably feels like, well, the only person I have is Fred. He's the only person who's there. And so a lot of those things do make sense, but I love that Carrie Fisher, there's just Carrie Fisher's character with Elizabeth is just, they're such the unlikely friends. They don't seem like they'd have anything in common, and yet they really get along. And the fact that...
And she takes her house sinking real well.
She outs her. I love that.
Like...
Oh, that was hilarious.
I've never... But even before that, she just like, oh, my house sank. Darn. It's like... What? Like I need to be as calm, cool, and collected as Carrie Fisher getting bad news and Drop Dead Fred.
Oh yeah, that's a gold standard. Like, you want to be that chill of a person, and then of course it works out because, like you said, she got the insurance, and it's like, woohoo! I'm on Easy Street, and she's screaming, "Thank you, Drop Dead Fred!"
But that's the thing, is that like, if just like that seems like a microcosm as its own thing. It'd be one thing if she thinks she sees Charles. And then Drop Dead Fred's like, oh, let's go get him. And he starts the boat. And she's like, no, this is my friend's boat, whatever. But she's the one that starts the boat. And like, what thinking is that? That, hey, I think I saw my husband on a speedboat. I'm on this big boat. Let me go chase him? Like, I realize we need a crazy scene or whatever. But like, that should have been more like Fred's fault of like, hey, we're going after him, or like he said, I want to be a pirate, just like taking the boat out, and she would be like, no, this isn't mine, like, oh, no, and then like her trying to fix it, because that was legitimately all her fault. Like, Fred did nothing in that scene.
I think that does make sense, because I think it just shows like how she obviously, it's an over exaggerated depiction of her making bad decisions for herself.
Yes,
because she's such a doormat. She's a total doormat. The fact that she's with someone, I don't even know how she ended up with such a douchebag for a husband.
Yeah, I want to know how they got together. Granted, like, he's a psycho and like a commanding person, so maybe that, but like, how did they get married? How did they stay together for so long? Is this like the first time he's cheated on her?
I doubt it.
Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like that with, him test driving the car with that girl. I didn't realize it's Bridget Fonda is Annabella.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. I was like, I know that face. Who is that? And I looked at it, I was like, oh my god, she's uncredited. That's how tiny this role is. She's uncredited in this role. It's so funny. But yeah, it's just like, I did want to know more about like how they got together and like what kept them together. Granted, like, what kept them together is like, obviously she's like a doormat and he can do whatever he wants, but then like he actually did leave for a while, and so then he came back because she looked hot at a party, and I don't know. It's a kids movie. I'm not trying to go too deep into it, but it makes me think.
I would just say that he's one of those guys, no offense to guys, that like having that submissive part of that person they can control because it makes them feel so superior. Like the fact that towards the end of the movie, like, he's back with her, but he's still cheating on her, and he's on the phone, he's like, hey, I'm in complete control. I'm in the driver's seat. Yeah. She'll do whatever I want. And even the mistress is basically like, that's it. I'm sick of this shit. And I'm like, thank the Christ for that. I'm like, because he is such a douche. And the fact that it's almost like him and the mom are like tag teaming on controlling Liz, I'm like, that's fucked up. What's doubly fucked up, aside from the mom pretty much dressing her daughter to look like her to win a man back, that's kind of disturbing to me. Like, you seem to think you're the gold standard on how wives should look, and the fact she's even saying, you just don't know how to make a marriage work. It's like, bitch, and you do? Your husband
right, like she's definitely dance momming her right there, and it's like, you're not like the gold standard of marriage institution over here, lady.
And on top of that, it's such a, like, I think the mom has more mental issues than Elizabeth does, and I think it's really sweet that by the end of it, Liz isn't mean or nasty to her, and like, you know, had these moments where I was like, fuck you. I mean, as close as she comes to, she's like, what a pile of shit. Like, just when she was a kid, that's like the best opening scene for me in the history of everything. It's like, well, you know, if the princess had been naughty, the prince would have run away, and the kid's just like, what a pile of shit. Now, like, yes.
Yeah, that was good.
That was so great.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of 8th grade. I don't know if you've seen that one yet. It was,
I haven't
think,
yet.
from last year, the year before.
Last year.
You haven't?
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, well, I don't want to give it away, but just like, Elsie Fisher's like the main character, stands up for herself, but she does it in like a believable character way. It's not like they don't have like this, kick down the door moment where everything is cured, like all your inhibitions and social anxieties and everything. Like, Phoebe Case is going to be scarred by her mom like for a long time, and so she's not going to be like, you know what? That's it. I hate this, and this. Let me get my list of demands. Yeah. Like, no, she's just going to be like, that's bullshit, and then she's going to forgive her, or, like her hugging her is just like, you're done. Like, your power over me is done. And there is no like grand speech or anything like that, because that's not who she is.
Yeah.
And that was what happened in 8th grade. Like, she stands up for herself at the end of the movie, but it's not like in this like grandiose, like over the top way. Like, she's still a shy little girl, and so is Phoebe Cates in this movie. And I did like that. Like, we all want her to get like a fucking slap in the face and a good tongue lashing and stuff, but that's not who that character is.
Yeah.
Like Drop Dead, like it would have been cool, like, as she falls onto the floor and like her and Drop Dead Fred become one. Like, that should have been the last thing. Like, she wakes up with Drop Dead Fred still like a part of her, and like Drop Dead Fred is the one that like tells her off or something like that, and then he leaves.
I think it's beautiful. I also like that it's the one moment we see any softness from the mom, where you kind of see like she's got her own issues there, and it's almost like maybe there's like a cycle of abuse thing going on. There usually is in those cases.
Yeah.
Where it's like she gives her a hug.
I would see like a flashback right there with the mom.
Yeah, it's like she gave her a hug, and she had this look on her face like, I don't know how to react, because it's like she's never received affection, so she doesn't know how to respond to it. And I thought that was really sweet, where at the most she's like not angry, where she's just like, get yourself a friend. Like, you need something to do with your life that isn't about having everything so perfect, because life isn't perfect. Because I think the one thing that kind of shows this mom is off a fucking rocker is she doesn't just hire a nanny for her grown-up daughter. She pretty much hires a security guard. Like,
yeah.
This woman is a psycho. She's, beating you when the doors are closed. Like,
I feel like it's such a 90s thing, too, because, like, a few years later we get Happy Gilmore with Ben Stiller, like, if you don't go to sleep, I will put you to sleep. Like, all healthcare workers or, like, mental health workers are, like, these abusive, terrible people that will kill you if you don't take your pills.
Totally. Like, I don't know what that is, but it was like, I would be scared. It's like, I can break you like that. It's like, but okay. And then I at least felt a little good when she accidentally cops a frying pan to the head, so I'm like, life is good. Okay, there's at least that, at least. But yeah, I love that this deals with things that it doesn't seem it at first, but I think ultimately it talks about child psychology, repression, and just like dealing with your inner child, and how it's okay to kind of keep those things that even I am such a big kid, because there wasn't I can kind of relate to this. I've dealt with the dad walking out stuff, and I've dealt with the fact that I was very mature for my age, and then my mom would always say things to me like she said, you always understood things that other people didn't as a kid. And I feel like there was moments where I wasn't able to be a kid as a kid, so I make up for it as an adult. I'm like, Peter Pan syndrome, like, where is Neverland, bitches? But
yeah,
and therefore I am this weird amalgamation of a person that you see before you. But yeah, I
also think like we do live in a time that like being not so much a kid, but like comic book movies and like Disney is like bigger than it's ever been before, and stuff like that. Like, so people like the our parents and stuff, like, why do you still collect action figures? Like, why are you such a nerd? I'm just like, one, because like because it is like that. Not that like my parents like repressed that, but they were forced to grow up real fast, and so I feel like our parents were like, hey, you gotta mature. Like, yes, we went outside and we played and everything, but they're always like, hey, you gotta get good grades, you gotta go to college, you gotta get a good job, and so like I feel like if and when like we become parents or like our generation becomes parents, like we'll be a little more relaxed and like not let kids be kids. Like, it's gonna be very different because we did have TV and video games and stuff like that, but it wasn't so like all around us. Like literally, like my setup right now that I'm at, I have a monitor. Like I have a fucking thing right now, so I'm the worst person to give this lesson. But like we did all play outside, and hopefully playing outside is still a thing after this whole fucking catastrophe that's going on.
There are children being born right now who won't know what this is.
Yeah.
Mother, what is outdoors?
Jeez, man. But it is going to be very different, and I feel like it's going to be more relaxed of like, hey, you can do a lot of things. Like, oh, you can be whatever you want to be. Like, it was just a saying for, like, to have, the lower class shut up and do their work, basically. And but now, like literally, like, everyone can make their own business. Like, whether it's on YouTube or like just starting a website or just literally whatever you want to do. Like, there's no limits because everything is at your fingertips now. And granted, there are still going to be those barriers, but I feel like they're starting to become melded just a little bit more. And I feel like, like it took a lot of convincing, and my parents still like, hey, are you sure you don't want to get an office job? Because, they have benefits and insurance and, 401k. And so, now that, things are finally happening, they've, pressed the brakes on that a little bit. But it took a lot of, they've always been very supportive, but there's always that like, hey, like, we're fine with you being in LA for now, but you might want to come back to reality. And it's just like, no, like I know what I want to do, and like I'm gonna work for it. And so I feel like our generation is gonna be maybe a little more forgiving of that. Like, yes, hopefully every parent wants the best for their kids, and they know what they know. Like and I don't fault my parents for that. Like, that's what they grew up with. You go to school, you get a job, you get a house, you get a family. That's what they do. And that's what that generation did, and it worked out great for them. Like, my parents both have great jobs and make good money and have a great house, and I love my family to death. But it's not this generation. It's not those times anymore, especially, buying a house. Fuck me if that's ever going to happen in this city. But yeah, it's very different, and I'd love to see maybe not like a remake of Drop Dead Fred, but like an updated version of like what childhood trauma would be like today, and like what repressed childhood like syndrome would be, and like you said, like Peter Pan syndrome. Like what, like, oh no, Drop Dead Fred sold all my bitcoins. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
Drop Dead Fred has me insider trading.
Oh man. So, in relation to this film, I have a question. Did you ever have an imaginary friend?
Not that I can remember, and maybe, that's the thing, is that Phoebe Cates is such like an exception in this movie where she remembers her imaginary friend, even though apparently a lot of kids have them, they don't remember them. And it was like that Disney Channel original movie, Don't Look Under the Bed, is that your imaginary friend, which is legitimately scary. That movie is legitimately fucking frightening to this day.
But it's also so damn good.
It's really good. But it's the thing of that, like, your imaginary friend becomes the boogeyman later in life once you stop believing in him. And so maybe I did have an imaginary friend. I really don't remember it, so I don't think it was, like, as visceral as Drop Dead Fred, where, like, he was the one throwing paint on my friend's mom or something like that. Like, there was nothing like that. But, no, like, I don't think I did. Did you?
I had 3.
Wow, look at you, Miss Popular.
I know. I actually remember their names, and it's weird because I remember that I could see them, but I couldn't see them. So obviously they were very much in my head. And they weren't real-size people. They were this big.
Oh, they're little babies.
Yeah,
oh, gotcha.
I had 3, and originally they were, their names were Lee, Boy, and Vader. The boy didn't have a name. He was just Boy.
I thought you were going to go Lee, Harvey, and Oswald. I was like, oh my god, Ashleigh.
I did not have.
Like,
my childhood was messed up. Not
surprised.
that
It wouldn't
messed
be
up.
that shocking.
Oh god. No, and then eventually Boy had a name and he became Jake, so it was Lee, Jake, and Vader, and I was always playing with them and they were always visiting me even if I was around people, they were just kind of always there. And and it's weird, like, I even had an imaginary villain.
Oh my gosh, you had a full cinematic universe over here.
I know. But
Suck it, Marvel.
I was always told I had an active imagination, and I still do to this day. It's very much who I am. And yeah, I remember there was like this evil witch, and she flew around on a broomstick, and she tried to chase my imaginary friends away. I'm like, as an adult, I'm looking back on this, I'm like, I was dealing with some issues that clearly.
Well, like, that's the thing. I didn't have any imaginary friends, but I definitely had an active imagination with like my action figures and toys. Like that book, Indian in the Cupboard, I read that thing probably 40 times. Like, in that movie, like, because that was my. Did you ever read that or see the movie?
Oh yeah, I've seen the movie. Oh damn.
Yeah.
That's an emotional movie right there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that was my dream of like having a cupboard where you could unlock it and all your action figures came to life. Like that. So I guess like that'd be as close as I got to an imaginary friend. Was that like just having like full adventures with like all my GI Joes and like I had Beanie Babies and Army Men and like comic book, all the X-Men and stuff like that. So I feel like that was probably as close as I got, because that was my favorite book, because like that's every little kid's dream, is that like like Toy Story, like, oh, your toys are alive when you're not around. But then Indian in the Cupboard was like, no, I get to see like my toys come alive and like be a part of the adventures.
I can see that. I definitely had my toys, all my Barbies. I had like my mermaid Barbies. Oh god, they were so pretty. I wanted to collect all three. But because I love mermaids. Mermaids are my shit. And then of course I had all my Disney character Barbies. I had Pocahontas. I had John Smith. I had Pocahontas's best friend. I'd play with them in the bathtub, and then of course, and I remember the games I played with my Barbies, and even looking back, I'm like, what? I was a fucked up kid, but I'm not.
We'll save that for Patreon.
I am not revealing the games I played with those toys. That's one way to get people to call the cops on me, or somebody around here probably. But it's. Like, for me, my favorite story growing up for me was always the Magic Faraway Tree. Like, that was me. This tree you climb up, and at the top of the tree is a different land every day. The land of eat what you want, the land of take what you want, the land of toys, the land of ice cream. I'm like, Mummy, where is this tree? I want to climb it. And they actually did a brief animated series where each episode was them going to a different land at the top of the tree, and there was only like maybe like 20 episodes. I wish that they had done more with it, because the animation was very simple, but oh my god, they look just like I imagined the characters in the book, with Moonface and Saucepan Man, and I wish that they had done more with it, because when I do revisit because I actually managed to get them on DVD, and when I rewatch them, I'm like, oh, I'm going back to my childhood. It is so great. And then you get to the end, I'm like, oh damn, no more episodes. Why didn't you make more? But I think it's funny that I had imaginary friends, you didn't. Your parents were happily married and are still happily married, and I came from a broken home. So I feel like I'm the poster child for imaginary friends.
No, and that's the thing, is that I've been very fortunate with my situation, and like, I was even in private school, so like that was kind of the norm, and then I went to public school for middle school, and I was like, oh yeah, like parents like get divorced, and then you go to high school, and that's even more prevalent, and then you go to college, and I'm like, it's like a rarity for parents to be together, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is crazy. Like I never would have guessed.
That is totally how it is. I remember in primary school, I was the odd one out. Most parents were together, mine were not, and I used to get picked on hard for it. Like, kids being evil little shits going, you don't have a dad, or you're the reason your dad left. I'm like, thanks a lot, because I don't have enough issues right now.
Oh my god!
Kids were fucking brutal, man. And then I get to high school and I'm expecting that, well, I got other shit, but I was expecting that shit as well. And it wasn't. Instead, it was looking around and like everybody suddenly were in my shoes now. Everybody's parents were divorced. And so when you bumped into someone who like, oh yeah, this is my mom and dad, it's like, wait, they're still married? It's like, oh yeah, it's like, what? That still happens? I still remember I'd be so shocked when I'd see them, like, married people? What? But I'd also be, like, really happy for them. And then, but there's also almost, like, a novelty to it. It's like, what is your secret? Let's sit down and listen to the story that is here of people being married or some shit. I don't know. Obviously, I'm delirious. What the fuck is in my drink? But I don't know. Obviously, we've had vastly different childhoods. I mean, obviously something's wrong when I start this episode by saying my childhood choice would have been motherfucking striptease.
Yeah.
I'm not a normal child, okay? I totally understood the point of that film and it wasn't about stripping. 2, the number of times...
I still haven't seen striptease.
What? You said you had.
I feel like I've seen parts of it. I don't think I've seen... Am I thinking of striptease? Yeah, I haven't seen striptease or showgirls.
Okay, we should totally do an episode with Showgirls because I would love to see your take on it because I actually like that movie because I actually think that...
Of course, of course you like that movie, Ashleigh.
Fuck off. But...
This is the least surprising thing on the planet.
But I would have picked striptease. Aside from the fact that would have like totally shocked people going, who picks that for a childhood movie? It's the simple fact of, my god, me as a child when people went around putting on that movie, grabbing the old school 90s vacuum, the large stand that was bigger than me. I know your eyes are raising like you're thinking something dirty. It ain't that. I used it as a microphone stand. So there would those Annie Lennox songs coming on, and I'm just like, da, 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 da. And then my family walks in, and I'm just freezing, like, da, 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 da. And my family be like, Ashleigh, were you singing along to striptease again? It's like, no, maybe. It's like, still to this day, I'll put on Little Bird by Annie Lennox, and my brother and I are like, woo, striptease. So yeah, we're weird. So out of 5, how would you rate my beloved Drop Dead Fred?
I think I gotta give it since it's so important to you, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Oh!
Just cause, I know, and it'd probably be lower if you didn't have such an attachment to it.
Oh, that is brutal.
But also and I've even said this in all the other, kids movies I've reviewed on my channel, like this movie wasn't made for me. Right. That's why, I've never seen Goonies. I'm never going to watch Goonies unless, we do it for if I do it for work. Because I'm not going to like Goonies. I'm not going to like it. Because it's not for me. How do you know you're not going to
like it if you haven't watched it?
Because, 1, everyone has hyped that movie up to death. Everyone, that is their favorite childhood movie. They talk Goonies this, Goonies that, blah, 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 blah.
It's not my favorite.
But it's probably not good, but you love it as a kid, and so that makes it good. And that's totally fine. I'm not, devaluing anyone's opinion about it. But, I watched Monster Squad last year, and that's another big childhood movie for my generation, and it sucks. Monster Squad's fucking terrible. It's not good. And so I feel like I just know that's what, I can already read the comments of you haven't seen Goonies? Shut the fuck up!
Well, you're not alone. I mean, there was a game show episode we did the other month. It's weird to think this is going to be 2 months I've gone without doing a game show episode. What the fuck is my life? And I think it was Daniel who said, yeah, he hadn't seen the Goonies. And so there was a Goonies question. And Nick and I were joking about the truffle shuffle, which I assume if you... And
yeah, I know that.
And Daniel was like, "Is this some weird sex act?" And we're like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, no, it's what? We're like, "Oh my god!" But it's like, yeah, if you haven't seen it, you hear something that bizarre, and apparently your mind goes straight to sex. So I get it, but I don't think it's the greatest film ever. I don't think I have a bond with it the same as other people. but I think that it was super fun. I live for the soundtrack, especially Cyndi Lauper, so good. But I still don't quite get that ending, but it's fun. It's got some funny moments, but is that amazing? I don't know. Drop Dead Fred, I'd want to say I give it 5 out of 5 because I love it so much, and because it is one of, I could go back and watch it over and over and over and over and over again and I'll never get sick of it. But from a critical standpoint, on a personal level, 5 out of 5. From a critical standpoint, I'd give it 4.5 out of 5 because there were some elements that I think they could have filled in the blanks on, and I don't think that they did that. So
yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
All right, and so what was my pick for you?
Benjamin here, he picked the 1986 film An American Tale, directed by Don Bluth, with a screenplay by Judy Fredberg. There was actually a lot of Jewish people who were working on this film. Tony Geis and...
I hope so.
Story by David Kirshner and the same names that I've just mentioned. And it's a story about a family of mice who are immigrating from Russia to America, and the youngest mouse, Fievel, he gets thrown overboard and gets separated from his family and has to find them all over again. And wow, what a poignant piece of cinema this is. And my God,
remember when animated movies didn't give a fuck?
I miss those days. Like, if you look at my film and go, oh, is this suitable for children? And then you look at this and it's like, this has some dark, hard-hitting things, and yet I don't agree with any of the negative critiques on this film going, it's too dark and gloomy, kids can't relate to it. Did you remember what old school Disney movies were like? I'm sorry. Snow White, bitch, your stepmom is trying to murder you and cut out your heart. Yeah, how many kids is that suitable for? But kids could take it.
I couldn't believe, like, I didn't even, like, you know, I pulled this up on IMDb right before we started. I can't believe it has a 38 Metascore. Like, that is the most shocking thing ever. Like, this is a classic animated movie. And yes, it has direct correlation to the Night of Shattered Glass with the Holocaust. Like, that is what it's about. Or you could go to, like, the Russians, like, persecuting the Jews, like, in Fiddler on the Roof. Like, you can use these, because the Jewish people have been persecuted throughout history. Like, sorry that I don't want to shelter my kid. Like, and it's still, like, I watched this movie 1,000 times growing up. Like, I was never like, oh no, like, my childhood is ruined. No, like, it taught me lessons about persecution, and it made, like, sorry, I don't want to put my kid in, like, a little bubble. Yes, I want him to be a kid. No, I'm not going to show him, like Holocaust documentaries, like, when he's 6 years old. Like, I won't show him Schindler's List, but this is a good intro to it. Like, it softens that blow of, like, oh no, they're just cats and mouse. But later on, you'll go back and watch this movie and realize, oh man, this really happened.
Oh yeah,
with real people.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where if I was watching this as a kid, you would have had the reaction of going, oh no, he's separated from his family, and we really want him to be back with his family again. And you following that, and you kind of being like scared for him. And I can totally see how my childhood self would have reacted to this, but then as an adult, like, within the first 5 minutes, I'm like, damn, they are going hard.
No,
like,
there's
first 5 minutes, you seeing the Cossacks, so that was a whole political group who were anti-Jewish in Russia back in the day, and they full-on raid and arson this village, and so you've got that happening in the background, but it's a footnote where they're showing it's cats versus mice, but the cats are pretty much, that's them. It's it's symbolic, and you as an adult, like, oh, there is no misinterpreting this. This is the Jews being persecuted. This is, I'm like, oh my God, did the Jews ever get a break?
No, and this thing, like, the fact that like, I love movies like Zootopia, where it's got like a veiled message about racism and, coming together as people, but they still sugarcoat a lot of it. And, if you think about the metaphor for less than half a second, it really falls apart. Even though I love Zootopia, it's one of my favorite movies of the decade.
Right.
But this one, like, the names of the mouse are Jewish. They are a Jewish family. They have a babushka. All their names are Jewish. Like, this, the metaphor, it's not even a metaphor. It's literally, like, it's an animated animal historic retelling of what happened to the Jewish people. Like, it's not even, you could put real names in here and I would believe you. Like, you could turn Mouskowitz into a regular Jewish name. Like, their name is fucking Mouskowitz. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say of, like, how real this movie makes it, but it doesn't overshadow it. Yes, it is about the persecution of these people, but it's still a kid's movie, and it's about an adventure of a little mouse that's trying to find his family, and the emotional moments are only made greater because of the realism behind it. Like, this movie still made me tear up as a 32-year-old adult when Fievel almost misses his family and then they finally hug in that little pond. I'm just like, Fievel!
It's such an educational piece, and it's so cultural. Because you don't just have, like, Russian mice. For starters, they're Russian Jewish mice in 1885 Shoshka, Russia. And then they're in Germany to get on a boat to America. And then and then they're all in song and dance. Whereas there are no cats in America. And I'm like, oh, wait till you get there. Like, you're fucked. But... yeah. But you've got an Italian mice joins in the song, and he's talking about the hardships in his country. You've got an Irish mouse, and he's talking about the hardships in his country because Lord knows they've had theirs as well. And it's like, it is totally a film not just about the hardships of the Jewish people, especially in this time, but it's a story of immigration and the American dream of all the people who have gone from other countries looking for a better life in America to not necessarily, find it. I, like, just hearing them tell the story of there are no cats in America, I'm like, it's totally people who... You hear these stories of people who immigrated so that their children could have a better life. And you hear it's like the dad was this renowned surgeon and mom had a doctorate in X, Y, and Z. And then they come to America, mom's now maid and dad, is working as a kitchen hand and has 50 other jobs. And they're having a terrible life, but they've done it so that their kids don't have to, like, live in a war-torn country or something. And the fact that there are these reviews going, kids can't relate to it, it's this, I'm like, okay, American-born children may not be able to relate to it, but there is a huge population who are immigrants. And why shouldn't they get a story where they can go, that was me? That was me with my family. And it's like, even that little thing where Fievel is like, Daddy, is that the ocean? Like, seeing the ocean for the first time. Like, that's so something a little kid would totally do if they saw the ocean for the first time.
Well, also, like, it explores such a darker side of, like, these guys that would, like, say, like, oh, America's so great, America has jobs, and they're basically selling people into indentured servitude or slavery.
For sure.
Like, and that's literally what happened. Like, you have a cat with a puppet mouse or whatever. I can't remember. Like, it's a puppet mouse that, like, is talking to all of them, right? I always forget if that's in Fievel Goes West or American Tail.
Well, there's a cat who disguises himself as a mouse, and he's, like, leading everything. And
yeah, like he's doing like a puppet thing, right? Or does he have like a finger? I thought he was like a puppet on a string. I'm trying to look.
Well, they had a giant rat puppet, but that was to scare the cats.
Oh, it's in Fievel Goes West. I always get those confused. Because like in Fievel Goes West, like literally a mouse puppet like tells them to go west. So it's like this. It's like the same story, but like from a different time.
Well, there we go.
But yeah, like you have like this propaganda of, there's no cats in America, and that's what happened to these European immigrants is like, oh, we'll find a better life there, when really like they were just literally being like put into indentured servitude.
Mm.
Like, oh, here's $1 a day for working at, this blacksmith shop or a factory 12 hours a day, and then here's $1 for your
And
wages.
not much has
Even though like
changed.
yeah. And so like and it's such a poignant message that they just don't pull any punches, and you don't see that nowadays, like
Mm-mm.
especially from a major distributing company like that, with like Dom DeLuise in this movie, and like who say directed this, Don Bluth. Like these are big names. This isn't, like, yes, we see like smaller animated movies, like, not pulling any punches, like Studio Ghibli or Laika. Like they're more
Mm.
prone to adult themes, but even them, like they still have like their sugar coating, and like there's really, besides the fact that these are like, if you make this an animated movie with people, it's dark as fuck.
Oh yeah.
But just the fact that they just put it with animals makes it for kids, and makes it so like palatable, and that you can't, like, I didn't realize, like, I think I grew up with this movie. It's 86. I was born in 87, so I grew up watching both American Tail and Five O Goes West, and I never thought anything of it. I love Somewhere Out There, and especially like I gravitated towards Five O Goes West a little more, just because I'm from Texas, all the West and cowboys and stuff. But this whole movie, like, even my mom would always be like, "Release the secret weapon!" Like she'd always say that all the time. Like it's so,
That is
and that's like
cute.
this movie's so ingrained in my childhood, and just like it's only when you see it like with more mature eyes that you're like, wow, like there's a lot in this.
It,
But it
it,
really goes to show the quality of filmmaking that you don't see it as a kid.
yeah, it was. I was so shocked at how in your face this storyline was. Like, you can look at other things and go, okay, it's subtle, but I can see where this is going. Where you watch this and you're like, oh no, 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 it's blatantly obvious what this story is. They're not really trying to hide it. It's funny that you can watch. I'd say kind of, I would say this kind of started in the 90s, but it's definitely more prevalent now, where a film, animated film, would have their story and there would be a deep meaning to the story, but they wouldn't really address it in the story itself. They'd kind of sprinkle it in the lyrics of the song.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it's the total opposite, where it is 100% the main focus of the story, and the songs are the sugarcoating part to make it a little easier
Yeah.
for kids to take in. And it's weird. It's like, as soon as the song's like, it's like, okay, we can take a break from the harsh realities of the story just for a minute or two, and then you come back and you're like, oh damn, it's like, it's that like on and off the gas type thing. And I was just so taken aback. I was not expecting that, because obviously I know of these films, and I think I may have seen Five Goes West as a kid. I definitely know I mostly saw the trailers to these films a lot, so that's the most
Yeah.
that I knew about it, but I didn't actually know much else beyond that. So it was just like, whoa. The fact that there's only like 2 voice actors I recognize, one of them being Christopher Plummer as the pigeon, like straight up, I'm like, what? I'm like, I know that voice. How do I know that voice? And
Yeah.
like, oh my god, it's Christopher Plummer. Like, did not expect anything
Well,
like that.
originally it was Kevin Spacey, but they replaced him.
You shady, shady. I think that there's a. Oh God, I love that. I read that Steven Spielberg fought to keep Fievel's name as Fievel because the studios wanted to change it. They said that it wasn't relatable, that it wasn't, an easy name to identify with or remember. And apparently it was his grandfather's Yiddish name, so he really wanted to keep that in there. And that brings me to one moment. This is so weird, and I can't believe that of the 2 of us, it's the Australian who noticed this. There's one scene. I now love the scene because I know what it represents now, but the scene is actually flawed. And it's Fievel walking around, and there's the children mice who are like in a classroom, and they're doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and he's got his face pushed up against the glass because it's like, oh, what are they doing? What is this? Apparently, Steven Spielberg said that he really wanted this scene to be in the film because it was a depiction of a story his grandfather told him, that his grandfather, when he was little, and this is educational for me because I didn't know this, that Jewish children were not allowed to be in the classroom with other children. They had to be outside and listen to the lesson through the window. They weren't allowed to be in there. And so that was meant to be representation of his grandfather, pushing up against the glass and taking in this lesson. I'm like, holy shit. Like, that is,
Jeez.
like, when you see the animation, you're like, oh, that's so cute. And then you hear that it's this depiction of something that is so, like, a shock to the system. And I'm like, wow, I did not even know that there was that kind of, like, segregation with Jewish kids in the schools. Like, about black and white segregated, but I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, man, y'all anti-Semite bitches. But...
Dude, like...
But here's the flaw in the scene, and it's the fact that they're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, I think it's hilarious that the American didn't pick up on this. So the film is set in 1885. The Pledge of Allegiance that they are saying is the 5th version of the Pledge of Allegiance, which wasn't created until 1954. So there's one problem there, but the one is that the Pledge of Allegiance itself wasn't written until 1892, so 7 years before the film is set. So these little children mice shouldn't be saying the Pledge of Allegiance at all because it didn't exist then.
Yeah, I think like that goes to show, like, it's an animated movie, like, it for kids, like, to drive it home that this is America, but there's still that segregation. Like, they're driving home that, oh, hey, I was supposed to come to America, no cats, rivers of gold, whatever you want to say, that, sold them about the American dream, but that, like, I'm outside looking in on the American dream, even though I'm in America. And yeah, like, I didn't notice that because I don't, like, that's like you should go work for CinemaSins or something, like, ding. No, it is a good catch, but I totally get why, like, they did that, just because, like, if you walk up to a window and, like, you hear them just teaching a lesson, it doesn't drive home the point that he's on the outside looking in. They want something about America, like, and what's more recognizable than the very modern Pledge of Allegiance, which I did every day in grade school. Like, yeah, we did it every day at the flagpole. So I'm totally there, and I totally get why that makes sense.
I totally get why it's there. I still, despite the fact that it's obviously not historically accurate, unlike a lot of the other depictions are in this film, I think that it's really good that Spielberg wanted to have something that was a reflection of something his own grandfather experienced that was a real reality. That's a bit of a tautology. Whoops.
Calm down, Neo.
But because I would not have necessarily looked at that and thought that it was more than it was had I not looked up and seen that. And then it's just like, man, you gotta appreciate so many things in films that you may not understand that there is a deeper meaning to, but there almost always is. There's, even if it's a film that you or me trash the fucking shit out of, there, to the director, there was something there, or a part of themselves that they were inserting into that. And I think it's quite beautiful that Spielberg was doing something about his own personal history and his family, and that the fact that a bunch of, I'm just gonna call it like it is, a bunch of white male movie critics back in the day shat on this film because they couldn't relate to it. Like, I'm just gonna say that is what it is. If you don't like it,
Well, that's why.
if you don't like it, that's fine. But the fact that the reviews by them flat out say the words, it's not relatable, children can't digest it, yada yada yada. It's like, no, you mean white American-born children can't digest it. You're not noticing that there are a large number of children and even parents who would totally relate to this film. It's like, white people aren't the only ones with stories, and it's like, why shouldn't they have a story to tell as well? It's, people shockingly still want to bitch about Pocahontas and Mulan and things like that, and it's like, my god, do you not hear the stories where it's little kids who identified with these characters going, there's a story for me? It's like, it's why you do these things. So just because you can't relate to it doesn't mean it's an unrelatable film. So, like...
And this thing, and even the story itself is like, it's like the fact that they're not like pulling any punches with like the characters and stuff. The story itself is pretty cookie cutter. Like, they're not like overreaching for anything like that. So the fact that it's not relatable doesn't make any sense to me. It's about a little kid who loses his family and he's trying to find his family.
Any child who got lost in a department store can relate to that.
Yeah. And just like, that's the tagline. It's like, it literally says like a Russian mouse who's immigrating to America loses family, tries to find him. It's everything else that goes into it, like the real, like, just life of this film that separates it for me. And I don't know, it's so strange that I was so surprised seeing this score on IMDb, and I don't know, I'm sure it's around the same on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I always go against critics. Like, these guys are paid to give their opinion, for a reason. True. But it just seems so strange that they couldn't relate to this movie, and that's why I always say, even when I hate a kids movie, I can't remember the last kids movie that I didn't like the Minions movie. I can't stand the Minions, but they're not made for me. Like,
I think they're hilarious.
They're obviously super popular with little kids because it's three potato-looking yellow dudes that go banana, and kids love that. So it's like, I may not like the movie, but I know plenty of kids that do. Obviously, like, I've been to Universal Studios. They have their own fucking land. Like,
pretty much live there. But yeah, I mean, like, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert gave it 2 thumbs down. Like, what? Yeah. That was kind of really shocking because in the, I think there are obviously there are a lot of reviewers today who actually don't know who these people are, but they were the critics of the day.
They're they're the gold standard of movie criticism.
They were the people who could, like, when in today's age, I don't think anybody has the power with a review to make or break a film. I don't think that that's a thing, but it was kind of a thing back then where they could make or break a film because people paid such close attention to what they said. So to hear that these two, kind of legacies of the critic world gave it 2 thumbs down is, like, so shocking, and I'm like, I've lost respect for you guys. Like, damn, that's cold. That's cold. I would have and comparing it to one I think it was them. Yeah, the most downbeat children's movie since Return to Oz.
Oh my god. Jeez.
Like, first of all, I love Return to Oz.
It's just so strange, just because I still love Fievel and his family, and, like, the sister goes through, and especially because I put these movies kind of together, and I should have put them together like with Fievel Goes West, like with how much character development the sister gets in Fievel Goes West is so great. But I grew to love this family truly, and, like, I'm not Jewish, like I'm Catholic, like I didn't have my grandparents, like, from my both sides, yeah, like all our grandparents in this country are, you go down the line somewhere, like, your parents are most likely immigrants, unless you're Native American. Like, unless you're Native American, your parents, somewhere in your family, there's an immigrant in there, and that's great. And so the fact that these guys couldn't relate to this story is so strange to me, because it wasn't like, those overtly political movies where they're, like, driving in, like, some kind of agenda or something like that. No, it's just telling a story. Yeah. And it's just like, these things happened in history, and this is how some people dealt with them, and this is what these families went through. being separated, forced to do dead end, like, these day in, day out jobs just to survive, having the shittiest
I,
accommodations, still being persecuted even after they left their home country. Like,
mm.
they're just things that happen. Like, they're just being presented in a kid-friendly way.
I'm gonna say something, and if you didn't know or like Roger Ebert, I think that this for you would at least put you off ever wanting to give a shit about him. So we know that he didn't like An American Tail, and he gave it very harsh negative reviews. He gave a very positive review of Simply Irresistible and praised the hell out of it.
Which one was Simply Ears? Was that the crab one?
Yes.
Um, oh, old age was getting old, Raj.
He defended that film, not saying, he didn't say that it was a great film, but he understood that it was a throwback to old romantic films of the day, and he was like, he got where they were coming from, and therefore he liked it. But this, he totally panned, and I'm going,
yeah.
Look, I enjoy Simply Irresistible because I think it's fun, but I can watch it, and I did, and can still tell you it's not a good film. It's dumb, it makes no sense, and it's, Ben can probably start trashing it all over again, and I wouldn't disagree with him, but I like it because I'm fucking weird. But the fact that someone can be a professional critic who's basically meant to be, to a degree, unbiased. We all have our bias. I certainly, at least if I don't like a film, but I can see that it is a technical great film, I can kind of separate my personal feelings from it. But yeah, for him to be just like, that was good, this is shit, and I'm like, there's nothing shit about this movie.
I don't get it. That's just extra crazy. That's nuts.
Critic, you know what? It just goes to show, it doesn't matter the decade. Opinions, everybody's got their opinion.
Well, and that's what's so funny. It's like you say, like, I think people, like, granted, like, obviously there's people that's not going to know who Siskel and Ebert are, but those are always, like, the people that get referred to, like, oh, Ebert never would have gotten this wrong. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Go watch their reviews. I'm like, they were still people with subjective opinions, too. Like, they got plenty of shit wrong, and they also trashed a lot of good films. So,
like this one.
Get out of here with that.
Yeah, it has kind of become this thing over the years where it became the reference, where it's, oh, you don't like this film, it's like, well, Roger Ebert and Siskel, they said this was the greatest film. It's like, yeah, 20 years ago opinions change and films evolve. Even though a film stays stagnant where it is, people grow, and therefore their opinions of the films change. So you can't just go and say, like, because these two giants of the industry said X, Y, and Z, that it is only X, Y, and Z. It's just like, no, form your own opinion. Don't take theirs.
If your only argument about liking or disliking a film is other people's opinions, whether it's, oh, this has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's still other people's opinions. If you yourself can't defend a movie, and granted, you don't need to defend your opinion, but if you, like, attack someone for their opinion and be like, oh, well, Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs down, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Like, I love and respect Siskel and Ebert as critics, and they were paid for their work, and they're obviously the gold standard for a reason. But if you yourself can't give me reasons to not like a film or to like a film, then you have no sway, and therefore you shouldn't be saying anything.
And we still have that now. We have, people jumping into comments, especially on YouTube, if someone says something about a film, and the two main names that you probably, well, there's going to be 3, but I've forgotten the other dude's name. You'll probably say it. Because me and popular people, I don't give no shits. But you're going to hear people in the comments going, wow, you thought this, well, Grace Randolph said this, like, who fucking cares? Or Jeremy Jan said this. It's like, you're treating them like this they're, at the end of the day, they're people who got on the internet and just gave their opinions on movies.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it doesn't make, just because they have millions of subscribers doesn't actually mean that their opinion holds more weight than anybody else's. It's just you people have held them up to this pedestal, but there technically shouldn't be one. It's like, well, people created the pedestal, so it's like, but the fact that everybody's like, well, you know, Grace Randolph said it's a great film, I'm like, so therefore it automatically must be right as the if.
Well, like, I don't want to take away, because I do feel like maybe not that particular person, but most people with large, like, somewhat large followings, like, have it for a reason. Like, when it comes to movie, YouTube criticism is tougher because a lot of YouTubers are just like angry yellers, and that gets a lot of subscribers and likes.
That is true.
It's more of just like, if that's your argument, like if you lead with or like, I saw an article, it was like, oh, well, there's a YouTube video explaining it. I was like, if you lead with that, you're done.
Yeah.
If you lead with, oh, well, so and so said it, it's like, no, like, even if you copy and paste their argument, at least you put some effort into it. If you take someone else's words and be like, because if someone can eloquently put something better than you can, that's great. Like, I've definitely been like, oh, that's a good argument. I like that. And then you can, if you hopefully you cite them, be like, oh, well, so and so, like, I really like this argument, and they said, well, this, and this, and I feel like that makes a good point. But if your whole argument is like, oh, well, so and so liked it, it's like, okay, like, I didn't, or I did, and that's great. That's all. I mean,
anybody who watches or listens to our podcast know that since we started this, we've been mostly agreeing on the fact that we don't agree.
Yes.
But, because we've always been very civil about it, even if Ben's calling me a dumbass for not liking his movies, you asshole. But we can actually sit down, defend our films, or even we can, like, point out the negative aspects of our own films. Yeah. We're not blind to them. It's just like, no, I know they're there, I just don't care because of blah da 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 da. I mean, and even one of the things that I love, and this kind of goes for any film in general, but I feel like I have more fun with it with us, is because we can put into words exactly what we think and feel about not just the film, but even just scenes in the film. Like, I'm gonna use Mandy as an example, because while you absolutely loved it and I absolutely hate it, I mean, someone put on Twitter the other day, you know how they're doing all those films, like, you can only pick one, and it was Nicolas Cage movies, and it says you can keep 3, and I said National Treasure, The Rock, and anything that isn't Mandy.
Yeah.
Whereas I know if it was you, Mandy would have been the first one up there.
Strong possibility. National Treasure is pretty good though too.
So good. But I was actually just watching it last night. Don't know why. I just felt like it. I think it was because I think I noticed that our Revenge episode was our most watched one on YouTube. And I'm like, funny, because especially with Mandy, we did not fucking agree on anything.
No.
And yet
But I feel like that's also internet things, like people disagreeing, like is clickbait basically.
But one of my favorite things as in us critiquing that film is when we were talking about the end shot of that film, with the moons or planets or whatever, and we both had a completely different interpretation of it, whereas you thought that it was a shot of them being on a different planet, and I thought that it was a symbolic gesture of the two characters reunited in planets or whatever. And we both, while we saw it completely differently, it's a one scene, and we both saw something different, but we both kind of looked at it and went, no, I totally see why you thought that. And that was fine. It's like, if somebody else just went and said, well, I think it's this because some person who has no relation to the film said so, it's like, yeah, that doesn't actually make it a fact. Like, unless the director actually came to you and said, this means this, it's not a fact, it's an opinion.
No.
So
Yes.
yeah, I don't know, but tell me, out of 5, what do you give An American Tail?
I gotta give it a 4.5 or
Okay.
4.7 out of 5. Like, maybe some of like the animation itself doesn't hold up. The songs are okay. They're not great, but just the characters are so rich and just lovable. And like Fievel's such a great protagonist. The story and the environment is still kid friendly, but it's very visceral. Like you
Oh
still
yeah.
really feel what is happening to these mice, and obviously now you can relate it to history. So what about you? What do you give it out of 5?
I would go with 4 out of 5 as well. I was surprised when the musical elements kind of popped up because off the bat it does not look like the kind of animation that would have songs thrown in. So when they came up, it's like, oh, okay. But I
Yeah,
didn't necessarily feel like the songs were that memorable. I think that they're cute, but it's not something where I'm like, I'm gonna go get the soundtrack. Which, if I love a song, that's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go get the bloody
yeah.
soundtrack. But
It almost feels like something they kind of had to put in,
yeah,
like to make it more of a kid movie. Because, like, I mean, I'm okay with a dark kids movie, but I feel like without those songs, like it would have been just there wouldn't have been a break with all the bad stuff that is happening to this
oh
family.
yeah,
Like they go through some hard times,
mm-hmm.
and so the songs give it like a little bit of life. Like it's like Fiddler on the Roof. Like Fiddler on the Roof. Like literally, like he's singing through the pain, and that's what the Mousekovits are doing.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to like picture this film if they had someone like Alan Menken doing the music for it. Like it could have been something even more than what it was, because not thinking like light, airy, like not like Little Mermaid type music, but more like Hunchback and Notre Dame soundtrack.
Yeah,
Like if they'd had someone like him do something like that with this film, I think it really could have elevated it and gone like, whoa, because God, if there are still people who haven't seen Hunchback of Notre Dame and have not heard the soundtrack, the story is super dark. We're talking about genocide, like way more prominent genocide story than with Pocahontas. We're talking about sexual harassment, bordering
oh
on
God,
sexual
yes.
assault. The fact that, for me, my favorite song in that movie is Hellfire, and Frollo singing it, and there's just this, basically, there's this like lyric of, I don't have the exact words right now because I'm throwing it out of context, but it's pretty much him saying, if you don't love me, I'm gonna burn you at the stake. And
Yeah,
it's like, okay. And I remember somebody watched it for the first time the other day. They're like, holy shit, dude, like this is a
yeah.
Disney movie. It's like, they went there, and it's so underappreciated. But I'm just trying to think of like a song like Hellfire, oh, but with this film, because just kind of people just singing the same lyric of "There are no cats in America" like on a loop, it kind of
Yeah,
loses its weight.
for sure.
But that is all we've got for today. I think it was another good day. I don't know. Is it just me, or do I feel like... No, is it just me who I feel like... No. Is it just me, or does it feel like the more we're going into this, like, we're kind of getting more of a rhythm? Things are like...
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm liking how we've been going about things, and even better considering 2-month break. And here we are.
yeah. It didn't feel like we missed a step, and like I like our tangents that we go on because like I don't like podcasts that are like straight laser focused. I like tangents and talking about other things, but we keep it movie related, and we still bring it back to the topic, and still I feel like give an in-depth review of each other's movies and how we feel about them and everything surrounding it. And I liked today. It was fun.
Yeah, not a lot of... No, I don't feel like... I think this is like 2 podcasts in a row where we haven't really been disagreeing.
Yeah,
I don't really think that we did disagree on anything, you know?
and especially like you never know. Like I was, because you never know with childhood movies, because movies just don't hold up, and that happens. you have very different viewpoints as a kid, obviously, than an adult.
Yeah.
So this could have gone way, way worse in like totally different directions. Like,
It could.
so I'm very pleased with the results.
I think we made some good choices. It's interesting that we both kind of picked a film that, while was one type of way for us as a kid, as an adult, there's so much to reflect on and take from it that actually lends itself to random podcasts on the internet.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna do any plugging because that's what the description box is for, full of links to Ben's stuff and my stuff. So instead, Ben, tell me, is there anything that you've got going on at the moment or things that you have coming up that you would like people to know about?
Just my Twitch, twitch.tv/the Ben Goddard. I feel like Twitch sometimes gets overlooked by the YouTube community because now YouTube has streaming. Play video games over there. I play movie trivia over there. You know, that's where I got my start right here on Ashleigh's channel with movie trivia. So yeah, just that. Not too many plugs. Just twitch.tv/the Ben Goddard, and that link is in the description below too.
It so is. It's above mine. So you'll see his first. And I don't have much to say for myself. I've got some screeners coming up on my channel. And aside from that, I'm in the middle of working on quite a big project for me. It's a big deal for me, kind of directing my first project. I'm really excited for that. I've been buying bits and pieces here and there to put it all together. We're probably a month or two away from me actually the proper inception of it, but I am really excited. This is going to be the first in a Patreon series, but the very first installment of it, which I'm going to put a lot of work into, is actually going to be public and on my YouTube channel. But so it's like the appetizer, if you will, and then everything else will be exclusive to my patrons.
That's awesome.
Everybody can stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode, and we hope to have some special things lined up for you in the future, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!